running up the score.
Jerry Napoleonello.
This team has been on the clock for 4 months now. Why are we taking this down to the 4-minute mark? You know, you have 10 minutes here. 10 minutes here, but you've had 4 months. The dude's got 1,021 text messages that he hasn't read yet. Did we not notice that?
Kevin Donlin.
Bryce Harper's a great player. He's very, very talented. Aside from last year, but I blame myself. I'm pretty sure I'm the reason for that with fantasy baseball.
That's disgusting.
Wow.
I can't believe that's real. I mean, again, I'm not. I shouldn't hate. I'm not going to be the kind of person that hates.
No,
He is doing enough hating for the both of us.
As a Cowboys fan, the expectations are so high, and it's just, you're dug into the ground by the end of the season.
You're basically like what the Patriots are, but like you try to do it, but you just don't.
No.
Yeah. At least the Jets, you know what I mean? They have excuses.
This is Running Up the Score, your one-stop spot for all things sports. Now here's your hosts, Jerry Napoleonello and Kevin Donlin.
About it before the fight this past Saturday. UFC 247, Jon Jones was going up against Dominic Reyes, and I said before the fight that Saturday when we had our podcast that he just seems to have I wouldn't say a problem, but he kind of levels out a little bit. His athleticism takes over when it comes to that. But, he had problems with Alexander Gustafsson, and he showed to have problems with Dominic Reyes in this fight. I'm talking about Jon Jones, obviously. But a lot of people feel like Dominic Reyes actually won that fight. And when you think about it, because the fight went to a decision, and, we could talk about the fight all we want, but this is kind of a bigger issue, I guess you can say. And I wanted to get into it because I saw a clip of Joe Rogan during not just the Jon Jones fight, but it was during another fight during the main card. And he's talking about the judges not watching. So now when you think about it, that main event, Jon Jones versus Dominic Reyes, we're saying that it went to the decision and that Dominic Reyes probably won the fight, but then you look at this clip of him, Joe Rogan just ripping this judge to shreds about not watching this fight. Again, it wasn't the Jon Jones fight, but
It was earlier in the card.
it was earlier in the card.
And then you look at how the final
And then
fight
you-
ended.
exactly.
Wow.
So
Okay, UFC.
yeah.
Now you got our eyes open.
I have
That's
the
not
clip.
that's not the right move there.
No, I know. And I have the clip of Joe Rogan for 30 seconds just ripping to shreds this judge. And I'm going to play it now. This is Joe Rogan during, I forget who was fighting. It was the women's fight. And he just, because him and Dominic Cruz go back and forth about, this judge just not watching. And they watch them for 30 seconds. And he doesn't look up at all. So this is Joe Rogan and Dominic Cruz just ripping this judge.
We're looking at a judge who's not even watching the fight at all. This is insane.
The judges just don't even watch. They're looking down at the floor. Insane. It's going to be tough for the fighters tonight to figure out how to win a decision.
This is crazy. He's still not watching the fight.
Nice body kick.
It's kind of, I wouldn't say laughable, because you don't want to see a guy.
It's scary.
It's scary because when it
he's
comes
literally
down,
just watching the he had to stop watching the fight for a second because he's like, is this guy unbelievable?
Exactly.
The entire time looking down, and now you look at what the main event occurred.
That's what I'm saying.
What happened there, and I was wrong. I had talked about how Jon Jones no doubt would be able to win this fight. Jon Jones did show that he is a champion by the fifth round that he was able to put together. And, again, I'm not going to take any credit away from him. But the first two rounds of that fight were completely, almost utterly dominated by Reyes. And I I was very shocked even in the early part of that fight. I cannot believe they that went even to Jon Jones. If anything, I thought it should have been a draw. It was just it was a close fight. And it's scary to make a call like that at that point. I mean, you don't know.
It came down to obviously.
But who knows? These guys might have been watching the first 2 rounds of the fight.
And I think it comes down to Jon Jones having more of the takedowns. So
of course,
that was just the easier way of going about it.
Absolutely. He talked about it even on his post-fight. I mean, all he talked about was, I think my takedowns were able to take care of that. And it's like, don't put this that, this isn't a wrestling match. This is UFC.
Yeah.
And I think the UFC to some degree needs to realize that, there's two types of way of fighting. Or many types of way of fighting, to be honest. But there are, either you're standing or you're on the ground. And if you're trying to just put someone on the ground, then do something while you have them on the ground. Yeah. Taking them down and doing nothing with it. Yeah. This isn't, that pavement isn't going to,
I mean, that's a crazy thing because a guy can get taken down, get points for it. Like, get points taken away.
Literally,
or points,
they get right back up.
And then they get right back up. But it's like.
Where are the points coming from? I mean, what exactly happened there? Not much.
This is the problem when it comes down to it. We complain about refs, in other sports and this and that. But when it comes to
if you saw a ref in the NFL looking down during a play like that and the announcer said something, we'd have a big uproar.
But it's not even that. Like, when you look at it, we rip refs, in the NFL, we rip the umpires in baseball. We want robot umps, this and that. When you look at it in combat sports, especially the UFC, these fighters are on like a fight-to-fight contract. Like, all right, I'm signing for 10 fights here. But they have like a stipulation. I don't know if it's in contract or just the UFC way of doing it. If a fighter loses 3 fights in a row, you're out. Like, you're out of the UFC. So the fact that, what if it comes down to Reyes? Obviously he was undefeated, so it's null and void. But what if it comes down to Reyes having 2 fights lost in a row? You go into it, and this judge isn't even looking at your fight, and you end up losing by decision, therefore getting kicked out of the UFC, losing your job. Like, what are we going to say then? Like, why? Like, I don't like that this comes down to, 4 guys, 3 guys.
I'm pretty sure because of what just happened in that last event, especially considering the main event, and it might cause a huge uproar. Like, we're talking about it right now, but you can only imagine how Twitter's reacting to it.
That's how I saw it.
Of course, no, absolutely. They're probably reacting like at an unreal pace.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, this is something that has to be fixed, and I'm pretty sure as we talk right now, there are conversations within the UFC about taking care of that and making sure that the judges are out there watching these fights because, like you said, these are people's careers, these are people's
livelihood.
They work for months at a time.
Yeah.
You're showing up that night to judge a fight, so it's a big difference there. And
you're
not working hard to become a judge.
To be honest with you, like, how do you fix that? Like, what's the way of fixing that? It's tough because.
Well, if you notice, the publicity of a judge in the UFC is very minimal.
Well, and that's the thing.
You practically don't even know who these people are.
Exactly, and we
they'll
have
put their
problem.
names out there, but
and we have a problem with knowing the referee's name in the NFL or the referee's name.
You don't want to be that
you
judge
don't want to
that
know
judge
those guys.
the fight opposite than the rest of the world.
Yeah,
because you got to remember again, like I said, folks. This is the biggest problem. Like we had talked about the sports gambling aspect of this. And if a guy were to judge a fight the wrong way, there are probably a lot of people out there that had Reyes
lost money.
On that fight and had a lot of money pending on it, and there were a lot of people that had Jones probably pending for a lot of money. So
and we said what Jon Jones was minus 500 in that fight,
and a lot of people probably put a lot of money down.
You could put a lot of money down on Reyes to pay out a lot of money,
or you could have had a lot of money on Jon Jones.
Yeah, I mean it's just there's so many things into this whole aspect, and the fact that it comes down to this guy and he doesn't even he's not even watching a fight. Yeah, mind you, he probably was watching. It was the main event. But just the fact that there could be a question, I mean, that's the problem. That's the problem that we have. That's the problem that we have with baseball. Like, just that question of, did this guy take steroids? Or did this guy, cheat and steal signs and have a buzzer on his chest? Like, the fact that it's like, was this guy watching? Like, the questions like this is not something that you want to hear if you're, first of all, a fan of the sport, a CEO as, Dana White is. Like, this is just it's not something that you want to see in your sport. And it's sad that we're not discussing the fight. We're discussing what possibly could have happened, as in the judge not watching.
It was a great fight.
It was. And like, that's the thing when you watch a guy like Jon Jones, an absolutely dominating force in the sport. Some may say he's the best fighter ever.
And he looked human.
And he looked human in that fight. And like, that's something that you want to see more, especially because like, we loved it. I mean, I'm not saying we love seeing people lose, but when Ronda Rousey, like, everybody at most of the points in her career were like, she's unbelievable. Nobody's gonna beat this woman. Like, we might have to start having her fight guys. Like, that's how dominating she was. And then you have Holly Holm come in and just kind of
former boxer.
Yeah, like,
she just got one good hit of her.
And then it just kind of changed the outlook on Ronda Rousey's career. Now she's in the WWE. Like, it's just. And
Jon Jones might be following.
Yeah. Like, I listen.
That's another article for another day.
I love watching Jon Jones fight. I think he's unbelievable. And he's definitely something that UFC needs in the sport. That's why it's so hard to fathom, the stuff that he went through and failing the test and just having like 2 years out of his prime taken because, of being an idiot. But just overall, like, it's like, dude.
He comes back and it's incredible. He's a gifted.
Yeah, exactly. And, just the fact that, Dominic Reyes, I think now it comes to a point where we're not thinking about anybody else fighting Jon Jones. Like, Dominic Reyes has to fight Jon Jones again. Like, that's what's going to have to happen before, just because of how this whole thing transpired.
And what we're talking about right now.
Exactly. It's like, this is not what the UFC wants. They want to know, like, all right, can Dominic Reyes do it again? And they're like, this time actually beat him. Yeah. So that's going to be interesting.
For more Running Up the Score, go follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at RUTS Sports.